Hello there, happy Money Monday, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Abundant podcast. And this week, we're going to be talking about managing the expectation roller coaster. And this is a really important topic because abundance and living an abundant life is about so much more than the amount of money that you have. It's one of my favorite sayings to say abundance isn't about the amount of money, it's about your relationship with money. Abundance is a way of being. Abundance is a way that you feel. It's a way that you live your life. And the reality is that you can feel this way no matter how much money you have or what your financial situation looks like. And this is the case not just for money, but also just how you feel in the life that you are living. And so when we are in a place where we're not feeling abundant, when we're not feeling free, there are a couple factors that we can adjust and shift in order to come into a deeper state of abundance. One of the most important parts of those factors is the internal work of uncovering why aren't we feeling abundant to begin with, and how can we start to shift that? So that's what we're going to talk about today, is the internal side of abundance. Now, a really big part of creating abundance actually comes from learning to manage our emotions. Why? Because our emotions and the way that we feel in our day-to-day, that creates how we feel about our lives. And that creates whether we believe that we are living our most abundant life or not. I've witnessed people who have lots of money. They make tons of money, but they feel very stressed. They feel like they still don't have enough. They feel like they're not living the life that they really wanted to live, or the life that they thought they would be able to live once they had more money. I've also worked with clients who have very little money, who feel that same level of stress or not enoughness, or vice versa. I've witnessed clients with not that much money, but actually feeling really solid and confident and feeling like they are living their most abundant lives. So again, it's not about the amount of money, but it's about your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs around the amount of money you have, and also around the life that you are living. So managing your emotions is a huge part of living and creating your most abundant life, because you can experience a wide range of challenging, difficult emotions no matter how much money you have, and also no matter what your life looks like. And the reality is that that's just a part of being a human. That's just a part of living and existing, that we're going to have negative, challenging emotions that knock us out of this feeling of freedom and abundance. But in order to actually create and live our most abundant lives, we have to create that feeling of abundance now. And this isn't about just like being happy all the time and thinking like things are great and life is rainbows and butterflies and nothing ever goes wrong. In fact, I think this is an inaccurate definition and expectation of what abundance is. And so when life happens and we experience negative emotions, disappointments, frustration, stresses, whatever it looks like, we make that mean that we are not living our abundant life, that something is wrong, that something needs to change or be different. But it's not about being happy all the time. Abundance is about learning to expand your capacity to hold and experience all of life, the highs and the lows. Because as you do manifest and bring in more and more money, you're still going to have problems. They're just going to be different problems, different challenges. You're going to face different circumstances and different situations, and you're still going to have moments in time where you feel crappy, where things happen, where life is hard, where it's challenging, where you're upset, where you're disappointed, where you're going on a emotional downward spiral. That's normal. And that's not against living your abundant life. That's part of your abundant life. The difference between people who are living their most abundant life and people who are not is the way that you think about these negative emotions and the way you deal with negative emotions when they come up, so that you can experience fully the highs, but also move quickly and efficiently through the lows when they do come up. And that's really the difference. And this is something I talk about with my clients all the time. Is it's one thing to feel a negative emotion, whether you're ashamed or stressed out or disappointed, whatever it is, or not worthy or not good enough or afraid it's not all going to work out. Whenever you experience a negative emotion, the common thing that we do is we take that negative emotion, and on top of that, we put a layer of judgment or shame. And we think like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. What's wrong with me? Oh no, something bad is happening. And we get extra uncomfortable in that negative emotion. We pile on more heaviness on top of it. And the problem with that is this is what can create a downward spiral. This is what can cause us to keep going down this negative rabbit hole, and it makes the negative emotions that we're already feeling more and more heavy, which makes it harder for us to turn them around and move through them quickly and get out of them quickly so that we can come back into our sense of abundance. So all of this being said, and to summarize, basically what I'm saying is that feeling this state of abundance, this energy of enoughness, feeling good, feeling like you're living your best life is possible right now, no matter how much money you have, because it's a way of being. And we can create that way of being by moving through negative emotions quickly and effectively and coming back to this energy, this mindset of abundance over and over again. So how do we actually do this? How do we stop these negative downward spirals from piling on more and more and feeling like abundance is far out of reach? And it's not by shutting down these negative emotions and finding a way for them to never exist. It's about moving through them quickly. And we do this by uncovering what is going on in our brain that is either taking us out of the feeling of abundance or is holding us back from stepping into abundance from where we are currently standing right now if we get knocked out of that abundant way of being. Now, this is a skill set that can be practiced, is uncovering what creates the current reality and redirecting into the abundant reality that you want to be living in. And it all starts with awareness, which is the whole first step that I teach my clients in the Empowered Abundance program, because this is something that's happening all of the time. Whether you're aware of it or not, we have patterns in our brain, in our mindset, that create this reality that we're currently living. We have habitual thought patterns and therefore habitual emotions that keep unfolding over and over again, and therefore cause us to feel the same about our life when we're presented with different circumstances. Or even when our circumstances change, we can still feel the same about our lives. But instead of trying to change these circumstances of our lives and hoping that that's going to make things better or different, for example, when I get more money, then I'll feel better. Instead, we need to change what's going on in our brain that is preventing us from stepping into this energy of abundance every single day, starting right now, from where we're at and how much money we have, and also from whatever we are currently feeling in this moment. And there are some very specific practices that I teach my clients in Empowered Abundance that helps them bring awareness to exactly what is going on in their mind that creates the current cycle of your life? What exactly is going on in your brain that creates these feelings of not enoughness? And I'm just going to go into one specific area of awareness during this podcast episode today. But as always, if you want to go deeper into uncovering all the tools for bringing deep awareness to your mindset so that you can shift into abundance at any point in time, you can join the wait list for the Empowered Abundance Program so that you can get all the updates on when enrollment is opening again soon. But the specific example that I want to dive into today is very important when it comes to learning to create your most abundant life. Because in general, most of these mental processes, they happen on autopilot. They're just our default, which is why we can, end up in the same situation over and over again for literally our whole entire lives, no matter what we do. And it's because we have these default internal processes that we're not even aware of. So what we need to do is bring awareness to the exact moment that knocks us out of our abundant energy. If life is going well and we are feeling good, and there are some circumstances that are going our way, right? We're in a lucky streak. Things are working out well. It's easy to feel that high vibe. It's easy to feel like you're on top of the world. It's easy to feel like you're crushing it and feel like you're abundant. But then when things are not going your way, it's harder to tap into this same type of energy. And so how we start to build this muscle of being able to tap into abundance no matter what is by uncovering the exact moment that we start to fall out of abundance. And this is something that could be so subtle at first. A small feeling of disappointment or not enoughness that you don't really even notice at first, but that continues to grow over time and build up. And suddenly you find yourself in this negative downward spiral. And then it feels hard to get back to that feeling of abundance and that sense of enoughness. So what we have to do is really notice, how are you feeling every single day and why are you feeling that way? And then notice the moment that you step out of this feeling of abundance. And then this is the important part, asking yourself why that happened. Because so often that moment happens so quickly and it just passes us by and we're not even sure what created it, what triggered it, what caused us to be knocked off of our sense of abundance. But if we can pinpoint the exact moment that we get knocked off, then we can start to have power and control over that moment. And instead of just letting our default brain systems, our default thought patterns kick on and have us act and react the same way we normally do, have us make up the same stories and beliefs that we typically do, and go on the same, emotional roller coaster that we typically do. Instead, we can break free from this pattern and we can make a different choice. Now, the best example of what this looks like is what I like to call the expectation roller coaster. I find that so often the thing that knocks us out of our sense of abundance is the disappointment that comes from having an unmet expectation. And this is a unfortunate fatal flaw in the human brain, is the expectations that we create for our lives. And the reality is that we as humans walk around as expectation machines. We have expectations for everything. We have small expectations about how our coffee should taste, how our day should go, how quick the traffic should be moving. And we have larger expectations, like how our partners should act, how much money we should be making, how quickly we should be able to sign clients and grow a profitable business, how quickly we should be able to transform or heal an area of our lives that have been challenging, how quickly we should be able to manifest the things that we've been trying to manifest. We have expectations all the time about everything. It's normal. It's normal to have expectations. But the problem with expectations is that when they are not met, we make that mean things about ourselves. We create a story in our head about what is actually happening. But not just about what is actually happening. We make a story about what's actually happening in comparison to what we expected would happen. And this is like the pivot point that can tip us out of a state of abundance and knock us into a massive downward spiral, is creating a story about reality in comparison to our expectations about ourselves, the world, and money. And why isn't it working the way I wanted it to work? Why isn't it happening the way I wanted it to happen? What is wrong with me? What's wrong with the world? Why can't I get it right? Etc., etc. And this is exactly the thought process that is happening under the surface that we might not even realize is happening, that can be the first domino in an emotional downward spiral that makes it really hard to step back into a state of abundance, the emotional feelings of abundance and the mindset of abundance. So what do we do about this? This is the reason why I'm telling you this, is so you can start to bring awareness to this very significant first fall of the domino. Because like I said earlier, so often these mental processes happen without us noticing, and that pivotal moment passes us by, and then like flash forward 3 days later, we're feeling a little off, it's getting worse, we're starting to judge ourselves, and then you know what happens next. But if we can start to notice the moment that disappointment kicks in, the moment that the comparative story that doesn't meet our expectations starts to form in your mind, that's the moment that we need to zero our awareness into. Because it's that exact story of disappointment and what we make that disappointment mean about us that creates everything that happens next. But if we can see that moment very clearly and catch it in real time when it is actually happening, then we can change that story. That story doesn't have to be about disappointment. It doesn't have to be about, whatever you make it mean, us not being good enough, us not being worthy, us not being deserving, us making the wrong choice, us failing. It doesn't have to be that. Instead, we can change the narrative and have a more accurate and also compassionate view of ourselves and reality. Because the truth is that expectations are ridiculous. All expectations. Yes, sometimes they're accurate, and yes, sometimes they come from a good place and they are the things that we want. And yes, we do want to focus on the things that we want, but when we hold to expectations, that's when we're just setting ourselves up over and over again for disappointment. Now, to share a personal story with you, I am sharing all of this from a personal place because I have experienced this so many times in my life, especially growing a business. For so many years in my business, I have had expectations about the growth and transformation and therefore the results that I expected in my business. When I first started my business, I really thought that I would be making 6 figures in 6 months. I thought I would be rolling in dough, would be crushing it. I would have tons of clients coming out of the blue. I would be fully booked. I would just figure it out. It would all work out. And I was partially hoping that that would be the case. I was also expecting that that would be the case. So flash forward a year later when that didn't happen and I was working with my first business coach, I distinctly remember being on those coaching sessions, bawling my eyes out, being frustrated and annoyed and saying, why isn't it working? What am I doing wrong? I've done everything that you said. I don't understand. What's wrong with me? Is it just that like the universe hates me? I don't get it. What do I need to do differently? Right? That was so hard for me to be in that energy and in that place. And if anything, it was leaking a lot of effort for me to stay in this energy of not enoughness instead of being able to shift quickly back into the energy of enoughness and abundance. Because I've talked about this before, your energy around money, your relationship with money, and how you're feeling has a huge impact on your business. It's really hard for me to actually go and be successful and take the action I need to take and get the results I want to get if I'm in a really negative, hard place. It makes it hard for me to run my business. In fact, in those early days, I would take complete days off in the middle of the week and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to focus on. Nothing works anyway. Let me just binge watch Netflix all day and pretend like that's me being a business owner and doing self-care. But really, I just was in a negative energy that made it hard for me to do what I needed to do to make money. But this negative energy, this downward spiral, came from the fact that I had an expectation that business would be easy, that I would be making money right away, that it wouldn't take that much effort, that it wouldn't take that much work, that I didn't need to focus on my mindset and my belief systems, that I didn't need to market over an extended period of time, that I didn't need to learn who am I talking to and what am I talking about and how do I get really good at talking about it. And I didn't have the expectation that I needed to fail frickin' 500 times in order to actually start to build momentum and get it right. Like my expectations of what it took to grow a successful business that actually makes money was totally wrong. That's it. I had a completely wrong expectation of how long it was going to take me to make money in my business. And granted, I think everybody's journey is different. And it's when we compare our journey to other people, or we think that our journey should be one way because other people have it that way, that again is piling on the expectations, which are inaccurate. And that disappointment and the story that I created about not being good enough, about being a failure, that story is what knocked me off my kilter, took me out of my sense of abundance, and kicked me down a long, hard downward spiral that I had to learn how to crawl out of. Versus if we can pinpoint every single small or big expectation that we are creating about ourselves, the world, money, our lives every single day. And if we can notice the exact moments that those expectations were not met, and if we can notice the exact moments when we kick into disappointment and not enoughness, instead of letting that be our downfall, piling on shame, living the story, noticing in that moment, oh my gosh, I had an expectation. That's why I feel this way. I expected that things would be different. And here's the story that I'm making it mean about me, that expectation was not met. That can save you so much time and energy to notice what was the expectation that you thought would happen that hasn't happened. And this is what knocks us out of abundance, is because we have an expectation of what our abundant life should look like. And when those expectations are not met, that's actually the thing that knocks us out of abundance. But what we need to do is not push harder or work harder to try and create our expectations, because that's still clinging to the expectations. What we need to do is continue to practice surrendering our expectations. Noticing when we do create them, because you will. Humans do that. We just do create expectations without even realizing it. But then notice when you feel the disappointment that was because you had an expectation. That expectation was not met, and then you created a story about it. And know that story is just not true, because that story is only based on your expectation in comparison to reality. But the truth is your expectation is totally arbitrary. It's not based on anything. Yeah, maybe there's like other people who helped create this expectation, because for example, with me and my business, if I look on Instagram, I see like lots of business owners saying, yeah, you can make tons of money right away. And that created an expectation for me that it would be easy. But again, that was my own arbitrary expectation. Or maybe we pick up expectations from our childhood or our parents and just society telling us this is the way things should be. You should have a responsible job. You should be saving for retirement at a young age, and you're not responsible if you don't, etc. Right? We pick up expectations. But again, they're totally arbitrary. Life is crazy. The universe is crazy, and we can't tell the future. We don't know what's going to happen. Chaos can happen at any moment. It does. Life-altering events happen at any moment. Things that are easy for some people are hard for others. And we often have an inaccurate perspective of like what we're capable of in different lengths of time, right? That's a really fun saying, is we underestimate the amount that we can accomplish in a year. Or no, we overestimate the amount we can accomplish in 1 year, but we underestimate the amount that we can accomplish in 3. It's just like we as human have arbitrary, inaccurate, completely random expectations of reality, and then we use those expectations against ourselves. So can we give ourselves some grace? Can we recognize that when we're feeling disappointment, it's because there was some kind of expectation that was not being met? And if we can bring our awareness to that and have compassion for our negative emotion, compassion for our disappointment, compassion for ourselves for having an expectation that was not met, if we can learn to see our expectations clearly, see the situation clearly, and change the story that we are telling ourselves about our unmet expectation, that's going to save you so much time and energy. Instead, we can come into compassion and we can come into enoughness. We can shift the story to look at, where are we now? What actually has happened? What is the reality if I remove the comparative story of the expectation and just write the story based on reality? How can I start to see reality differently to support the life that I want to live, instead of use this against myself and against my life? And this is really the practice of cultivating abundance all the time, because you can feel a sense of enoughness even in the hardness, even in the disappointment, even in the feeling of not having your expectations met and having life be hard and having life be challenging and not being where you want to be. You can still feel a sense of gratitude and enoughness and even abundance in that place. But it has to start with not letting the downward spiral sweep you off your feet and take you into that dark abyss. We have to do it by bringing awareness to what is creating that downward spiral in the first place and learning to direct our energy back into a place of enoughness. And that's a huge practice that I teach in the Empowered Abundance program. So here's a practice for you that you can start to do this week, is if you're in a negative emotion right now, one is notice, when did this start? And can you uncover what was the exact moment that created it? And what was the expectation that was not met? Or what is the current expectation that you had that is not being met, that is creating this negative emotion that you are in now? Or if you notice disappointment or negative emotions come up at any point in time over the next week, whether they're even if they're like really small fragments of a negative emotion. You just feel it for a second and then you move on and you're like, oh, think positive, everything's fine. We want to practice noticing it and not letting those disappointments add up over time, because just bypassing it and staying positive, that actually doesn't work either. I'm going to have to do a whole separate podcast episode just on that, like false positivity. But notice when small disappointments or negative emotions come up and take that extra moment to pause and bring awareness to what was the expectation that created this and what am I making it mean about me that this expectation was not met. And this is such a powerful practice. Notice what happens when you do that. And honestly, if you start practicing this, share with me what you find out. Either send me an email, reply to one of my emails if you're on my email list, or you can send me a message on Instagram, because I would love to hear what you notice when you start to bring awareness to our expectations and to our disappointments. And if you want to take this work to the next level, this work of bringing awareness to your relationship with money so you can start to step into abundance now, then I invite you to take my free quiz where you can discover your money mindset type, your specific money mindset type, and how to work with your money mindset to step closer into abundance. Through my work helping people transform their relationship with money, I've discovered there are different money mindset types, and therefore those money mindset types need different things in order to bring abundance into reality. So you want to make sure that you're working with your money mindset type, because that'll help you get into abundance faster. And it ties into everything we talked about today, which is the more you can bring awareness to what's going on inside that's affecting your current relationship with money, the easier it is to actually cultivate abundance now. Because again, abundance is a way of being, and internal awareness is a huge part of actually cultivating that. So if you haven't taken the free quiz yet, you can do that on my website, thebizhippie.com/quiz, and that link is in the show notes below. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Money Monday, and I will see you next week.